And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, AEG puts out a series of games called the Tempest series. It's in its own world. There's 4 games in the series, and although this one is called Tempest 4, I thought Love Letter was number 4, but maybe Love Letter has been removed, but Love Letter is also in the universe. There's also 3 other games. Domineer is my favorite of the series so far, and they're all set into this fantasy, not fantasy, but this medieval realm, which, to be frank, isn't really that compelling. I read all the stories that are in the rule books and stuff. It's kind of interesting, but it's just kind of like intrigue back and forth. Think Pillars of the Earth kind of stuff, I guess. But I don't really feel attached to the characters because there's like 600 billion of them. But anyhow, it does make a nice framework. And this one was designed by Philip DeBerry, who did Revolution and did the very first Courtier, the very first game in the Tempest series. This one is about building canals and buildings next to them. Let's take a look at how it plays. Each player is given a house that they're going to control. These are the same houses that are in the other Tempest games. And you get a special ability. Like, for example, this guy's buildings will cost 1 less. And they each have a mission. If he ends the game here with 15 coins, he'll score 20 points. Now, you'll randomly pick the side. So you could have a different, even though you control the same house, you get $5 extra at the beginning of the game if you start with this one. And you place the warehouse for free. And your mission here is to score an industrial building that uses a resource that's worth 3. And if you're successful, you get 10 points. So you can see here's a church. Now, many of them have guile markers. You'll get these guile markers, and you'll need to use those to do different abilities. Like here, a guile ability, place a chapel during your turn. So I can spend one of these to put a chapel on the board. And my mission is to connect one chapel to one harbor and a second chapel to another harbor. And if I do that, score 10 points. So the guile abilities can be different depending on what side you're using and depending on what ability you're using. There's just different things, and each person has their own mission. Players will also draw 2 mission cards at the beginning of the game. They keep these secret, but these are missions you might. The school must be connected to 2 scored buildings, and 3 if the Kusmal Koenig is in play, and you score 15 points if you do that. Or here at the end of the game, you may pay $10 to gain 15 points. Or here, score any one of the following, and you get 10 points each for up to 2 of those. So these are different things. There's Brad Pitt again. He shows up in a lot of Tempest games. So you have all these different effects. Score at least 4 buildings, 5 buildings, or 6 buildings, depending on the number of players. And if you do that, you get 15 points. So this is kind of gives you some goals besides the goal that your faction gives you. So you have kind of 3 goals that you're going for. Now, there are 2 decks of cards that players will be using over the course of the game. One deck is used during rounds 1 and 2. The other deck is used in rounds 3 or 4. At the beginning of each round, players are going to get dealt a certain number of cards. So you're going to look at the cards that are in your hand, and then you're going to play one. Everyone plays one face down, and then you play them in player order, revealing them. Then you pass the remainder cards to the person on your left, and then you'll draw one of those cards and play it, and keep going. Now, each card that you play has 2 different things that you can do. The top half is always going to be something you can build. This lets you build both those pieces. This lets you build the size 4 canal or a size 3 canal. There's all sorts of buildings. There's another canal. There's the die maker. They all have very specific buildings that they can build if you use the top part. Or you can do the bottom part. Here, take an extra guile marker or score 4 points. Here you can gain 4 coins. Here you can draw an extra mission card. So the bottom ones are basically, giving you money. Here you gain 5 points, you get $5 and lose 2 points. So the bottom ones are things that you can do. Sometimes you don't want to do the top, or you can't afford to do the top, or you place a building. It's not a very difficult choice. It's just which one's the better choice. It's about time we looked at this board. The board itself has a scoring track up here and also has piles of all the tiles there, sorted by shape. It doesn't really matter how they're piled because you can pick up a pile and sort through it when you're looking for a specific building. At the beginning of the game, you're going to place, there's 8 resources, and you're going to place 6 of them randomly around the board in those spots there. These 6 buildings are different resources, each a different color with a different symbol on it. There are 2 other resources, which certain cards will allow you to place as the game goes by. There's also 2 harbors. You can see one of the harbors here, one here, and then there's some gardens on the board. Now, as players play buildings, they're usually trying to connect them to other buildings. For example, let's take a look at this smelter. I first of all must say that when you place a building, you have to always look here in the top. See that little X there? That means something you need to do as you place it. This one is going to cost you 2 coins to place it, and then it will give you a victory point for each building you put it next to. While if you build this guild hall here, you have to pay 5 coins, but then you draw an extra mission card. So if you don't have enough money, and you'll run out of money quickly, you only start with 5, you'll have to use cards to get money before you can place these. As I said, you can place them anywhere on the board as long as they fit into the grid, and the orientation doesn't matter. You can place these, but you're usually going to try to place them adjacent to things. See, at the end of the game, this smelter is going to be worth 5 points if it's connected to the ore, which, as we can see, is right there. So why not just put it right next to the ore? Well, it also has to be connected adjacent to the harbor. Oh, well, that's a little harder. Well, here's the fortunate thing. Whenever you have to be adjacent to something, if you are next to a canal and the thing that you're going to is also next to a canal, then you are considered to be adjacent to it. So building canals properly around the town will make sure that you're adjacent to different spots. Also, many of the buildings require you to be adjacent to tenements. So if you need to be adjacent to a tenement, well, maybe the tenement's down here. And again, they're adjacent because they're both next to the same canal. Of course, sometimes players may play a lock. There might be a part of a canal that's a lock, and then if you use that canal to support your building, then you will have to pay that person a coin anytime you use that. If you're taking tenements from one person, only one person controls the tenement buildings that are attached to you. And by the way, each player has little markers to put on buildings to show that they own them, and also if they've used it or not. Then that person will get points. If you build next to a park or gardens. Let's say I build a building adjacent to here and it scores. It's going to get me 3 points. While if I build it down here, it's going to get me 5 points. That one, oh, you said, well, I go next to the 5. Yes, but that's very far from the resources. While the 7 is a great one, but it's very far from the harbors. So there's all sorts of things that you're trying to do, and as the game progresses, the bigger buildings will be harder, and as time goes, and you can seriously cut resources off from other people by going into the spot that they want it to go into. So the game itself is fairly simple. You're just going to play a card, draft a card, play a card, put the buildings out, and as time goes by, the board is going to get very constricted, and there'll be a lot of buildings you can't put out because they don't matter. You know, you can put out more gardens and score points for the people you put them next to. You can put out canals. There's special buildings that let you do things. But eventually you'll go through the game 4 rounds. At that point, you'll add up all the points you've gotten. Everyone reveals their secret missions, see if they've done the missions of their factions, and any extra points that might be provided by special buildings on the board. And whoever has the most points is the winner. So that's the game. It's really interesting how heavy this game is in a sense compared to how simple it seems. What I mean is, it's really not difficult. If you don't do, you can pick a card, throw it down, and always pick the bottom, because the bottom will always do something for you, give you money points or what have you. But you pick the top, put a building out. Where you put that building is such an important thing. This game is really vicious in a sense because you can just block other people off from where they need to go. You can, at the same time, you're kind of tense where you're going to place buildings, because buildings that you place at the very beginning of the game have a huge effect at the end. If you play this game multiple times in a row, you'll find that I would imagine everybody that will play this will play their second game completely differently than they play their first one. It's a very thinky game. I am not convinced that all the special abilities / missions of each of the factions is equal. In fact, I feel pretty strongly they're not. I don't think I have, the designer has obviously probably played the game many more times than I have, but they feel like some of them are way easier to do than other ones. So, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't seem to be a big difference. In the mission cards, definitely some of them are easier to do than others, and for the amount of points that they give. But that's, since there's a lot of points be given out over the course of the game, I don't think it matters quite as much. And being able to score those buildings is where it's going to matter, and placing those buildings and not setting yourself to be cut off where you put down a building that should have scored you a lot more points but didn't because you weren't able to connect to the pigs. So it's interesting. I think it's okay, though. I think it's deep. I think there's a lot of thought that can go into it. I think that if you play with people who have analysis prowess, it's going to really slow the game down because they're going to take a tile and they're going to go, because you're allowed to put the tile anywhere. And so they have 4 cards in their hand, and each card lets them put out a tile anywhere they want. Then they got to see where all the connections are. So that can be problematic, but I think it's just that, I'm having a hard time kind of describing what didn't click for me here. It's not that I don't like it. It's just that it was edging towards work playing the game. Sitting there going, where do I need to connect these? And near the end of the game, it wasn't very interesting because you got so many cards and drew buildings that simply couldn't go anywhere. Sure, I could set myself up, but people were accidentally blocking you. And it's one thing if someone cuts me off, and I'm like, well played, sir, and I'm annoyed at them or flip a table or something. But if they do it by accident, that's a little more irritating. Or if you accidentally block yourself off because you didn't know the cards you were going to draw on turn 4. I don't know. I think it's an interesting game, and I think there's people who will really enjoy it, and I think it offers a lot more than it looks. You look at it, doesn't look like much of a game, but there's really a lot of game in there. But I have to say that in the long run, it just wasn't very satisfying for me. So I'll give this one a mediocre rating. I don't dislike it, but not really excited about it either. I'm excited that they're continuing this universe, and I'd like to see more and more games in this universe. But I'm kind of like, it was really cool how the first one, the fourth one, and the third one were very different. I mean, the first 4 were different from each other. Love Letter was something completely unique and interesting. I would like to see another one. This one feels almost too similar to some of the first 4. I'd like to see them spread out and see different games. Anyhow, who knows? That's Canalis.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Stefan, shut the door.
There?